So, Kyrsten Sinema, independent senator from Arizona, is our guest now. Good morning to you, and thank you for making time for us.
Absolutely. Good to be with you this morning.
We got a number of questions. Let's see how many we get through, okay? Here we go.
Okay.
Some of the items in your bill with Senator Lankford and Senator Murphy are tough. Catch and release, no to economic migrants. And some of these items in the House bill that they agreed to are tough also. And together, it seems like it might be a pretty effective bill that you could put into action fairly soon. So why not work with the House and come up with something you can both agree on?
That's an excellent question. And as you know, I served in the House for 6 years. And so while crafting this legislation with Senators Lankford and Senator Murphy, I worked closely with my colleagues in the House. And in fact, the bill that we introduced on Sunday evening incorporates some of the elements from H.R. 2, but we actually fixed some of the flaws. For instance, H.R. 2, while it enacted a Title 42-like authority, as does my legislation, H.R. 2 did not include any penalties for folks who tried to violate that Title 42 authority. Our bill actually created a one-year bar for anyone who tried to cross twice during the time of the Title 42-like authority. Another example is H.R. 2 allowed individuals to get work permits after they met an initial screening for asylum. But those work permits could last for years. In our bill, work permits were only authorized for 90 days after someone passed a new heightened asylum standard.
That sounds like something like the House Republicans who want to shut this down would agree to. So
I agree with you.
Why not call the conference?
Well, what's baffling to me is we can't actually call a conference until the Senate passes a bill. And what's really confusing is that my colleagues who 4 months ago asked me to work closely with them to secure the border as a national security interest, which, by the way, I agree. Border security is a national security issue. My state bears the brunt of this crisis every single day. And that's why we work to craft this legislation. Now, if the Senate were willing to get on the bill today, we could have an open amendment process, address concerns about the legislation, and then pass it and go to a conference. But it seems unfortunate that many of my colleagues have chosen not to even debate the legislation, but as you noted, within 24 hours of the bill's release, have changed their mind and said that they don't actually want to secure the border. Now that benefits people on both sides of the aisle. Both Democrats and Republicans are probably pretty happy that we're not going to do anything about border security. But as Arizona Senator, I can tell you this is devastating to my state. I saw the numbers that you portrayed right before this interview, where you highlighted that over 1 million immigrants have approached our border since October the 1st. You know how many of those are coming through Arizona's desert. And my state, my mayors, my sheriffs, my county supervisors are sick of it. And that's why we've all supported legislation that would close the border and end catch and release.
One question was, and maybe you've answered this somewhere else, so please forgive me, but some people have asked, so why in the draft bill that you guys came up with did you not try to codify into law a Remain in Mexico policy?
Yeah, so unfortunately, you can't actually codify that without Mexico's consent.
Okay.
But what our bill does do is close the border during times of high traffic. I do want to note, every single day this year, the border would have been closed had my bill become law. Every single day this year, because the number of people coming is so high. We end catch and release, of course, by expanding detention and then removing people from the country quickly. And we pay in our bill for either sending them back to Mexico or putting them on planes and sending them back home to their own countries. Now, Remain in Mexico works, but only for the people that Mexico will take back. If they refuse to take back folks from certain countries, we have to repatriate them to their home countries or to another third country that will take them. And Senator Lankford and I worked closely to ensure that we were creating safe third country policies to prevent people from coming here when they could resettle in another country and to quickly repatriate them when they don't qualify for asylum.
Let me just jump in here. I mean, retract the word conference and put in the word meeting. Just like getting together and talking about it might break the logjam here. You said on CBS this past weekend, the reason we're doing this is we require the Biden administration and any future administration to actually implement this. What
Yes,
we're
that's
seeing
right.
from the American people is that they see laws on the books, and they see this administration not enforcing the laws. So,
Look, I share that
why
concern.
would they believe that now? Go ahead.
Well, you know, we agree on this issue. The Biden administration has not done a good job of implementing laws on the books. But we do know that we have to actually change laws to make some of this more possible, right? Former President Trump tried to keep, like before Title 42 was in effect, before COVID, he tried to shut down the border, and he was stopped by the courts. And as we know, the courts ended Title 42. I've been trying to reinstate it since that time, but we actually have to change the law so we have the authority to do that. We actually have to change the asylum policy standards to make it harder for people to actually get asylum. Right now, people who are economic migrants just claim asylum and get to come into the country. We need to change that law, and President Trump asked to change that law as well. But what our bill does that is different than we've seen in former laws is we require the administration to implement these policies like the border closure. We don't just say you can do it if you want to. We require the administration to do that.
But that requires enforcement. Just because it's in the words on a sheet of paper doesn't mean it's going to happen. That's what we're hearing from ranchers for 2,000 miles along that southwest border.
You're exactly right. And that's why our legislation specifically created right to sue for states to sue the federal government if they failed to implement the law. As you know, prior lawsuits trying to force the Biden administration to implement laws have failed because courts have held that there was no jurisdiction to sue. Our bill actually created judicial review and gave a right to sue if the federal government failed to implement the law. Now, that has never been done before, and it's unfortunate that that will also go by the wayside today when my colleagues choose to kill this bill before we debate it.
Is the bill dead? It's over?
It is.
Okay.
Unfortunately, yesterday, the Senate Republican Conference announced that they're not going to support even debating the bill. And I'm disappointed.
Does it make you not
4
want
months
to?
ago,
I mean, I know you're making a decision whether to run. Does something like this make you want to not run for office again?
you know, I'm 100% focused on just getting this job done. And so while others have decided that border security is just a talking point for the election, I can promise you this. As someone who was born and raised near the border in Arizona, this is not a talking point for me. This is our daily lives. And I hear from our ranchers. I hear from our police officers. I hear from our farmers every day. This crisis will be here tomorrow and the next day,
and the next year,
regardless of
minimum.
Congress's failure to act.
You're in a
That's right.
You're in a battleground state. When do you make a decision on whether or not you run again?
Well, I can tell you that decision won't be made today, because today I'm going to continue to remind my colleagues of the consequences of their decision. Look, it may not be a consequence for them living in some state in the interior of the country, but in Arizona, this isn't politics, guys. This is our daily life.
Yeah.
And I am incredibly disappointed that people have chosen politics over the lives of the families, the farmers, the ranchers, and folks living every day in southern Arizona.
And we've been watching that decline and reporting on it for 3 years.
Thanks for being here.
Appreciate you coming on today. Thank you, Senator.
Thanks.